snap. There's the kick. It's gone! Oh my gosh! The kick is gone!
Boston Sports Nerds present Joe's Fantasy Field Goal.
What's up, bitches? It's Joe from Joe's Fantasy Field Goal / the Boston Sports Nerds. And we're back. We're hitting deadlines, people. Hitting deadlines. It's Tuesday, and I told you guys every Tuesday, so this is what you're gonna get. It is late, however, so normally I go through and edit out all the ums and uhs and weird stops and pauses where I'm stopping to think, so I'm probably not gonna do that this time, so I might sound real dumb in a couple spots. But it's late and I have work tomorrow, so you guys are just going to have to deal with it. But welcome back to the Field Goal. This is episode 3, doing it bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, every Tuesday until August, and then we're going to go weekly. This week, we got the 3 points like we normally do, field goal 3 points. 3 fantasy points is the whole premise. The 3 points this week are, one again. I like the first point should almost not be. The show is supposed to be 3 points to help you win your fantasy league, and when we get into the actual fantasy football season, it'll be more structured. Probably like a news point, a waiver wire point, who you should start point. But until then, it's going to be a little bit kind of just me coming up with things I think are interesting to talk about as points. So the first point is not really a point that'll help you win your league. It's a point that'll help I think will make your league more fun. You'll have a better time. And that is, I think every league should be at least some kind of PPR league. I know standard leagues are called standard for a reason. They're the norm. They're the most popular ones. But PPR, and I just started playing PPR. I'm still in leagues that aren't PPR. My main league, we just decided to switch to a half-point PPR league. We were a quarter-point PPR league. And quarter point is stupid and ridiculous. You just go half. But everyone should be in a PPR league. It makes the talent, like the wide receiver and running back talent, the pool is a little bit deeper. So running backs that may not get a lot of yards, but get the ball thrown to them a lot, are more valuable. Like Theo Riddick's value in a standard league is nowhere near what it is in a PPR league. And to eliminate Theo Riddick, who's involved in the Lions' game plan, and pretty much turn him into a non-factor or like a running back 3, even though he should really be like a running back 2, is stupid. And it makes your wide receiver talent pool deeper, because there are wide receivers that just get thrown the ball a lot that aren't your typical Dez Bryant touchdown factories. Like I want to say, Stephon Diggs last year. Stephen Diggs? Stephen Diggs last year. Is it Stefan or Stephen? Well, either way. Stephen Diggs last year, he caught, I think he was hurt for part of the year, but he caught a lot of passes, but he wasn't a touchdown guy. And that hurts his stock in Standard League for no reason. I mean, he's involved in the game. He just doesn't happen to get the one throw that counts for the most points. So Standard Leagues, PPR leagues, you don't have to do full point. I suggest half point is like the perfect middle ground between Standard and a full PPR where some of those guys become too valued, I think. Like Stephen Diggs, for example. Jarvis Landry is all of a sudden a monster because he just gets the ball thrown to him a lot, but he doesn't actually dominate games. So that's why I think half point gives you just enough of a boost in it where it makes some of these guys a little bit more relevant, but not too much of a boost where they're just taking these like these guys that get crazy amounts of throws to them, but they're all 2 yards and making them into fantasy studs when they shouldn't be. So I'm an advocate for half point PPR over standard leagues. Standard leagues, listen, I know they're the standard, but to just get points for touchdowns and yards, there's a guy who catches one pass through the whole game, but it happens to be a 90-yard touchdown. Is he more important than the guy who catches... Well, a 90-yard touchdown could be a huge play in a game, I guess. But let's say he catches a 90-yard pass but doesn't get the touchdown. That's 9 points, right? Is he better than a guy who had 8 receptions for 75 yards and no touchdown? No, he shouldn't be. Because the guy who had 8 receptions for 75 yards was involved the whole time. This guy had one freak play. So if you're doing half-point PPR, the guy who has 8 receptions for 75 yards ends up with 11 points. And the guy who had the 1 reception for 9 yards ends up with 9.5. It's just a better... It makes the guys who should be more valued. And it adds a little bit of value to guys who aren't touchdown fiends, pretty much. Those tiny slot receivers makes them a little bit more valuable. Those third down running backs who are frequently thrown the ball makes them a little bit more valuable. David Johnson is a monster. Frickin' PPR leagues. So yeah, I think everyone should have a PPR league. I think standard, actually ESPN, I think it's ESPN, just switched and they're going to be running PPR, full point PPR as their standard now. So if you start a new league and you don't mess with the settings at all, and I think it's an ESPN, it instantly makes you a full point PPR league. You have to actually change it to a standard league or a half point PPR, change your scoring however you want to. Also, decimal scoring is better. Limits ties, which you never really want to tie. Tie is almost worse than losing. If you do decimal scoring, just make it so that 1 yard is 0.1 points or whatever. That way 10 yards is 10 points, just like it would normally be, but for now instead, it'll always be a decimal. You'll always gain even a little point. That way it makes ties practically impossible. I mean, it could still happen, but it's very, 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 very unlikely that you're going to end up with the exact same amount of points down to the decimal. So, all in on PPR, all in on decimal scoring. Point 2, we're going to talk about a little bit of current event, fantasy relevant news, as well as like a fantasy outlook on a certain player. I did my wide receiver rankings last week, and this guy wasn't in the top 15. He's still not in the top 15, even though where he went. But Eric Decker just was released by the Jets, the worst franchise in the NFL this year. They will be, mark my words, they're going to go defeated. I think they're going to be the second team to do it since the Lions. But Eric Decker was released, and now he is on the Tennessee Titans with Mariota and the new rookie Corey Davis, Delaney Walker, and the dude who was their number 1 receiver last year, who came from Miami and whose name I can't remember right now. But Eric Decker's on the team. He will be, I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver there. I don't think he's going to play the 2 slot. I think he's going to be a wide receiver too, though. I don't think he's going to be crazy dominant. They like to run the ball first. They're a run-first team. They're not a pass-happy team. Mariota is a good quarterback if he's healthy, when he's healthy. I think Eric Decker will be fine. He's probably in the low 20s ranking if I had to rank him now. maybe high 30s, but I expect him to be a good wide receiver too, especially if he can get touchdowns. Mariota was super efficient with touchdowns last year. Eric Decker's been super efficient with touchdowns his entire career. It could be a crazy matchup putting them together, so maybe he's going to be a touchdown fiend like I was talking about before. But he's definitely the primary weapon in that passing attack now over a rookie. So I like Eric Decker's outlook this year. I think he's going to be, like I said, a wide receiver too, and I think you can get him pretty late in drafts. A lot of people completely forgot Eric Decker even exists. So you might be able to scoop him as like a wide receiver in like a wide receiver 3 spot and get wide receiver 2 production out of him. And my third point is my quarterback rankings. So we did running back, we did wide receiver. We're going to go straight to quarterback. And I don't know if I'm going to do a tight end rankings. Is there 15 tight ends even worth talking about, really? I don't know. But today we're going to do quarterback rankings. So, my number 1 quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. I have him over Brady. He's super efficient. You know, Aaron Rodgers has never led the league in passing. Ever. Never won a passing title. Which, I mean, for a guy that a lot of people consider the best quarterback playing right now, not me, obviously, but for a guy who a lot of people think is, he's never led the league in passing. He's such a weird quarterback. He throws. He doesn't throw a ton in some games. He'll throw like. Aaron Rodgers is the only quarterback I can think of off the top of my head who has games that are like 20 for 25 for 183 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, what is that? It's not great for fantasy. I mean, the 4 touchdowns is. It's a weird. You could have had a huge fantasy day. You still had a great fantasy day, but it could have been way bigger. He only threw for 183 yards. Somehow he got 4 touchdowns out of it. That's an Aaron Rodgers day. But I think he's been a top 3 quarterback for the past, since he's been in the league, pretty much, minus any year he got injured. But if he's healthy, he's 100% going to be a top 3 quarterback. So that's why he's my number 1. My number 2 is the GOAT, Tom Brady. I'll argue anyone who decides to go down that road with me. He's the greatest of all time. And he is my number 2 fantasy quarterback, so now I sound dumb, but he is. I personally think, maybe I should make him my number 1. I think Tom Brady's going to have a better year than Aaron Rodgers this year. I just think there's more risk involved with Tom Brady, which is why I put him at number 2. And that's strictly based on age. But I don't think Brady's going anywhere. He's going to be dominant. This is the best offensive team the Pats have had, at least skill-wise, since Randy Moss was here. And we saw what that season was like. Tom Brady was definitely the number 1 quarterback. So, I mean, you added Brandon Cooks. You pretty much swapped Martellus Bennett for Dwayne Allen, which is probably a downgrade, but not a huge one. It definitely is covered by the fact that they added Brandon Cooks. They've done nothing but add running back talent. They still have Malcolm Mitchell. They still have Julian Edelman. They still have Danny Amendola. They still have Chris Hogan. You added Brandon Cooks. You have Gronk back healthy for who knows how long, but at least at the start of the season. Brady, I think they're going at least. I think it's 15-1 or better this year. Maybe 14-2, but if I had to put money on it, they're going 15-1 and winning a Super Bowl. This team is going to be dominant on offense, completely dominant, and their defense got better, so Brady's probably going to get the ball more. All in on Brady. If he wasn't so old, he'd be my number 1. I'm not really worried about him getting hurt. Knock on wood. My number 3 is Andrew Luck. I know a lot of people aren't high on Luck. I've discovered this recently, that Andrew Luck, Although he was the messiah coming out of college, a lot of people are not as high on Andrew Luck. But as a fantasy quarterback, he is incredible. He throws for when he's healthy, I think he has like a 5,000 yard season and like crazy amounts of touchdowns. The last time he was completely healthy, 40 something touchdowns and like 4 or 5,000 yards. This is the number 2 or 1 fantasy quarterback. I have the rounds down here where each quarterback's going. Aaron Rodgers is at the 210. I never said that. Brady is at the 303. So you get Brady a little later. I still think both of those spots is way too high to draft a quarterback. I like to wait on quarterback. I think I said that in my first episode. Wait on quarterback, and you'll see why when I start naming off some other quarterbacks where they're getting drafted later on in this list. Luck is at the 507, and Luck could very well have a better year. I mean, it's very possible that he has a better year than Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. I don't think he'll have a better season than Tom Brady, but it is possible that he has a better season than Aaron Rodgers if his offensive line is even a tiny bit better. His offensive line is awful. That's the big problem with Andrew Luck. He never has any time. He gets hit more than most, like 90% of the quarterbacks in the NFL. If he's healthy, if he has time to throw, he's going to be guaranteed a top 5. It's pretty much a lock. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback. Especially with that offense, their inability. Frank Gore's a good running back, but not a great one. And they don't really like to run the ball a lot. That offense runs through Andrew Luck. So if he's healthy and he's upright, he's going to be a top 5. Lock it in. My number 4 quarterback is Drew Brees. He's a Hall of Famer. He probably leads the league in passing attempts every year. I don't think the Saints even know what a run play is. I feel like he throws the ball like 70 times a game. He's getting drafted a full round ahead of Andrew Luck. The thing about Drew Brees is his home and away splits are awful. Like terrible. Everyone knows this. I think it's pretty big narrative with Drew Brees. Is when he's not in the dome, he's not good. So, but the thing is, when he's in the dome, he's so good that it almost makes up for it. I don't like Drew Brees for where he's going in the draft. He's way high. He's at the 403. So if you're comfortable, I mean, if you listen to my first podcast, you shouldn't be comfortable taking Drew Brees at the 403. I'll explain to you why, but he is the 4th best quarterback he's probably the 3rd best quarterback in the league, but he's the 4th best fantasy quarterback. He'll have a great season. You're going to get steady. You know what you're getting from Drew Brees. He's going to be good in the dome, and he's going to be shaky outside of it. So if you're okay with that, draft him if he falls later. I wouldn't draft him at the 403, but that's just me. My number 5 is Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson is running, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. If he can run. Last year he couldn't run for half the year, and he was bad. And then the second half of the year, he could run, and he was good. Mainly because the Seattle Seahawks offensive line is trash. And if he can't run, he's going to get hit. But if he can run, he's going to get you rushing yards, which is great for a quarterback. And he can throw for over 300 yards a game. Easy. Especially with how piss poor I think that rushing offense is going to be in Seattle this year. So, I think that Russell Wilson kind of has a weird narrative about him where he's really good in the second half of the season and he's a shit show in the first half. I think it's kind of a bullshit narrative. Last year, if it worked out that way because he was hurt, I think he's healthy this year. I think he'll have a good year all the way around. So I'm kind of high on Russell Wilson this year. He's another guy that if he's healthy, if he's upright, if he's not getting killed behind that terrible offensive line, he could easily be a number 1 quarterback. He could easily be the number 1 quarterback in the league. Fantasy wise. If he's upright, he could definitely be the best fantasy quarterback. But I think he'll end up at 5, which is why I put him there. Number 6 is Matty Ice, Matt Ryan. He's going at the 5'10". Russell Wilson, by the way, is going at the 7'08". So you can get Russell Wilson 2 rounds after Drew Brees. Again, wait on quarterback. Matt Ryan, MVP last year, was insanely efficient. So efficient that I think it's impossible that he repeats what he did last year. That offense was historic. But what are the odds that it's going to happen again, minus the mastermind of it in Kyle Shanahan? So he's gone to San Francisco, and they replaced him with, is his name Sarkisian? I can't think of his name. He was the offensive coordinator for Alabama for, I'm pretty sure, literally one game, the championship. They lost, and now he is the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. He runs the same system as Kyle Shanahan, but it's not Kyle Shanahan. So I'm expecting they'll still be good. It'll still be a good offense. Matt Ryan will still be a good quarterback. It's just not going to be the same. Don't expect MVP Matt Ryan. Expect number 6 Matt Ryan. Number 7 is Kirk Cousins. I think I have Kirk Cousins higher than a lot of people. Kirk Cousins is like the most slept on fantasy quarterback to ever exist. The dude has thrown over 4,000 yards, I think, for two straight seasons. 3 straight seasons? He's been great. He's literally not been bad ever since he started being the starting quarterback for the Washington Redskins. He puts up numbers. He puts numbers on the board. I think it's dumb that people have him ranked so low. He's going at the 806. So that's 3 rounds after Andrew Luck. Three rounds after Andrew Luck, Kirk Cousins could definitely. I don't know if he could finish as the number 1. He could definitely finish in the top 3 though. So 3 rounds after Andrew Luck, you could get a quarterback that could finish as a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. He lost Deshaun Jackson. He lost Pierre Garçon. So that's shitty. That doesn't help my case for him. But they added Terrell Pryor, and they didn't lose Jordan Reed. The main thing there is they didn't lose Jordan Reed. The offense runs through Jordan Reed. I dropped my pen. The offense runs through Jordan Reed, and Jamison Crowder is still there. Jamison Crowder had a great year last year. Terrell Pryor had a good year last year for the Browns. So I can only imagine what's going to happen when he actually has a good quarterback throwing him the ball. They have that rookie Josh Doxson, who hopefully sees the field this year. He was talented, but he was hurt last year. Sorry, I yawned. So they should be. I think Kirk Cousins will be fine. Like I said, he has top 3 upside. You can get him in round 8. This is why I tell you to wait on quarterbacks, people. Unless you're in a 2 quarterback league, don't freak out about your quarterback. Stock up. Stock up on skill position players. Worry about your quarterback later. And this is the prime example of why. Is number 8 is Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford was on an MVP caliber pace. He was in the same talks as Matt Ryan, as Tom Brady, as an MVP candidate, until he hurt his finger. And then it kind of went downhill. But before that, he was on MVP caliber pace. He was having a great season. And then he hurt his finger. So barring injury, I don't see any reason why Matt Stafford can't have another great season. They added another wide receiver in the draft, Kenny Golladay. I think he's going to take Anquan Bolden's spot. They still have Golden Tate. They still have Eric Ebron. Amir Abdullah's back. They still have pass-catching running back extraordinaire Theo Riddick. And they still don't have a running game. So they have to pass. Their defense is still shaky. So they have to pass to stay in games. Stafford is... You can get Stafford at 10, 12. Almost the 11th round. You can get Matt Stafford. That's 5 rounds after Matty Ice. 5 rounds after Andrew Luck. 6 rounds after Drew Brees. And Matt Stafford could easily be a top 3 quarterback. It would not shock me in the slightest if he was healthy all year. I mean, remember, this is a guy who put up a 5,000-yard season. Granted, it was with Calvin Johnson, but he's done it before. He's going in the 10th round. Wait on quarterback. If you're in a one quarterback league, here's a rule. Maybe I should have made this my point one. If you're in a one quarterback league, you should only have one quarterback on your roster. I know, bye week. Worry about the bye week when it gets there. Maybe you can find a running back or a wide receiver you've been holding on to that you can dump, or extra tight end. Why you would have an extra tight end, I don't know. But you can always dump a wide receiver or running back if you really want to hold on to your quarterback. But if not, if you don't care about your quarterback, you should only have one quarterback on your roster. That's it. In a one quarterback league. If I draft Matt Stafford at the 10-12, my team is stacked by then. Because everyone else has been drafting quarterbacks. You'll see some of these numbers. You'll see some of these average draft positions later that go above Matt Stafford. There's only one other guy on this list that goes after Matt Stafford. So everyone else on this list is going to go before him. On average. And all those times that people are taking quarterbacks, that adds another skill position player that's better than their skill position player on your team, and you might still end up with a better quarterback in Matt Stafford at the 10-12. And you should only keep Matt Stafford. He should be the only quarterback on your roster till you hit a bye week. Then you cut a wide receiver that you aren't using. You add a quarterback just for the bye week. And then you cut the quarterback after the bye week and keep starting Matt Stafford. That should be the only time you have 2 quarterbacks on your roster. Bye week. And if you have a quarterback that's maybe not Matt Stafford, maybe a quarterback even further down this list, just cut the quarterback and stream matchups. Alright, get back to the list. My number 9, just to review Matt Stafford, he was once a 5,000-yard passer. The team can only throw. They can't run the ball. Their defense is bad. They have to throw. He was on an MVP pace before he hurt his hand. His hand is now healthy. He's going to go back to throwing the ball constantly. And he's being drafted in the 10th round. And you can get him, and he's my number 8 quarterback on this list. With top 3 upside. Easy. My number 9 is Andy Dalton. This is another guy. Andy Dalton has a top 5 tight end in football, Tyler Eifert. He has a top 5 wide receiver in football. I have him at 6 on my wide receiver rankings, AJ Green. He just got a rookie, the fastest rookie to ever exist, in John Ross on the other side. He has a pass-catching running back in Giovanni Bernard. He got one of the best running backs in the draft this year in Joe Mixon. He's surrounded by talent on that offense. His offensive line is shaky. Their defense is shaky now. It was good, shaky now. He's going to have to throw the ball to stay in games. He's a good quarterback. You can get him in the 11th round. This is the only other guy you can get later than Matt Stafford. And he, again, has top 3 upside. So why are you drafting quarterbacks early? Should never happen. You can get Matt Stafford or Andy Dalton in the 10th or 11th round. Maybe later than that, because everyone might have a quarterback by then. You're in a 10-team league. Matt Stafford's going in the 10th round. There could be 10 quarterbacks gone by then. If my list here is right, there's 15 quarterbacks gone. 14 quarterbacks gone before Matt Stafford goes. So you could technically get Matt Stafford undrafted. unless people start taking 2 quarterbacks for their team. This is why we wait, people. This is why my first tip outside of a rant was wait on quarterback. Because why? Why draft one? I know Aaron Rodgers is nice. Aaron Rodgers has what? Top 3. Well, he's guaranteed top 3 pretty much, barring injury. But I can almost... Matt Stafford is guaranteed top 10, I would say. Barring injury, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. Andy Dalton, a safe projection is top 10. That's very modest. He could definitely be a top 3. It wouldn't shock me if Andy Dalton goes off this year. I know, his line is shaky. Really shaky. They lost a lot of pieces on that offensive line. But he's just got so much talent around him. If he even has a little time to throw, I like Andy Dalton. Especially at the 11:05. Especially practically... I mean, he's practically the very end of your drafts. I mean, who's going to take a quarterback? Unless people are taking 2 quarterbacks, which is, like I just said earlier, a stupid move. If you're in a 10-team league, every other quarterback's taken. There's 10 teams have a quarterback already. Or 9 teams have a quarterback already. Just, alright, I'll take Andy Dalton. And then I'll take a defense and a kicker, and that's the end of the draft. And now your team's loaded with talent, and some dumbass got Aaron Rodgers in the 2nd round. And you got Jay Ajayi. He has to suffer with Theo Riddick as his number 2. I get so passionate about late quarterbacks. My number 10 quarterback is Dak. I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, because it's only his 2nd year in the league. But he was super consistent last year. And he kind of got off to a slow start touchdown-wise. I don't think he threw a touchdown until like week 10. Some stupid stat like that. Later in the year, for sure. But he'll have a better year this year, I think. I'm not expecting a huge regression from him. I think he'll have a better passing year. Maybe not in an actual quarterback sense. Maybe he throws a couple more picks. Maybe he's not as efficient as he was last year, which is going to be hard for him to do because he was pretty efficient last year. But that's in like a real quarterback scenario kind of thing, not in fantasy football. In fantasy football, I think he'll be just as good as last year. And you know what he's got a great offensive line in front of him. He's got Des Bryant. He's got Ezekiel Elliott, who hopefully they throw the ball to a little bit more this year. He's got Cole Beasley, who was kind of a stud last year on the low. I don't know where he came from, but Dak will be good. Getting him at the 904. So Dak is going before Matt Stafford, a guy who's thrown for 5,000 yards in the league. You can get him after Dak Prescott, who's got 1 year in the league. It's kind of ridiculous. My number 11 quarterback is Marcus Mariota. I think Marcus Mariota, especially with the addition of Eric Decker, like I talked about earlier in the show, is primed for a crazy year this year if he's healthy. And that's the big thing. If he's healthy. He's a good passer. He gets you rushing yards, which is always great if you have a quarterback, because you need 25 passing yards to get 1 point in most leagues. You need 10 rushing yards to get 1 point. So 10 yards rushing is equivalent of 25 yards passing. So if I rush for 50 yards, like Marcus Mariota does pretty often, that's the equivalent of what, passing for like 125 yards, I think. 50 yards rushing is 125 yards passing. That's insane. And Marcus Mariota can easily rush for 50 yards. He's got really good weapons around him this year. He's got a great offensive line. If he stays upright, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's a top 7 quarterback this year. Barring injury. top 7. If he's healthy the entire year, he will finish as a top 7 quarterback. The only reason I have him at 11 is there's injury risk. He could miss a few games. And some of these guys are a little bit safer. My number 12 is famous Jameis Winston. I want to talk about a guy who added nothing but weapons to that offense. He had Mike Evans. He added Deshaun Jackson. He added O.J. Howard. He added another receiver, Chris Goodwin. I think his name is Chris. It's Goodwin. His last name is Goodwin or Godwin. They added him. He's like a 3rd round pick. He's supposed to be really good. They lost Doug Martin to a suspension, but he'll be back. The team is stacked, man, on offense at least. And Jameis has got a lot of toys. He was good last year. I wouldn't say he was stupendous last year, but he was good enough. And with the added, this is a make or break year for Jameis Winston, I think. You're really going to see if he's going to step up to that upper echelon of quarterbacks, or if he's just going to kind of be the 12th quarterback on the list like he is now. We could see, I could be doing this list next year and have Jameis Winston at the 7. It depends on what he does this year. I have a lot of personal stock in Jameis Winston because in my main league, he is my quarterback keeper because you'll notice Big Ben is not on this list because he sucks and he's hurt all the time. But, yeah, so Jameis, I hope Jameis has a good year. He's got the weapons. This is really kind of a prove-it-all season for him. I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be the number 12. Obviously, that's why I put him here, but he could be, I'm not going to say he has top 3 upside. I'm going to say he has top 5 upside. Hopefully, Jameis Winston is my number 7 quarterback next year. Hopefully, he has a good season. My number 13 quarterback is a guy who got way overpaid and he's getting way overdrafted, and that's Derek Carr. And I talked about this on the B.S.N podcast last week, that I think he got overpaid. You know, he actually had a worse season last year statistically than the year before. Well, you wouldn't guess that, right? Because he was in the MVP talks and shit. But he statistically, he regressed. He had a worse season from last year than the year before. This is a guy who has a great offensive line, surrounded by talent. Michael Crabtree on one side, Amari Cooper on the other. They don't really have a tight end, but who gives a fuck? They have Marshawn Lynch now. And that's because they have Marshawn Lynch now, I'm a little worried about Derek Carr. I think they're going to be a run-first team. I think when they get down to that goal line, they're going to run the ball in. They have Marshawn Lynch. He even made a comment like, hey, we're not going to be a team that throws the ball when we have Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. A little jab at the Seahawks, which I appreciate. But that doesn't help his fantasy stock. So I like Derek Carr at the number 13. He is a guy with upside. That's probably why Derek Carr is being drafted at the 606. That's 2 rounds ahead of Kirk Cousins. That's a round ahead of Russell Wilson. It's 4 rounds ahead of Matt Stafford. A round behind Andrew Luck. That's insane. That's way too high to get Derek Carr. He has upside. He definitely has upside. He's a guy that probably has top 5 upside. But so does Matt Stafford. So does Andy Dalton. So does Kirk Cousins. I don't see why you would draft him in the 606. That's way too high. And I have red flags sticking up about Derek Carr mainly because of his draft price. If he falls to you if he falls to you in, like, say, the 10th round, the 9th round, take him. I like Stafford better. I would still take Stafford. I would still take Dalton. But if you like Derek Carr, take him later. But take him later. That's the point. Take him later. Don't take him at the 606. Not when you can get these guys later. But Derek Carr is the 13. He deserves to be... I think he could have a top 10 season this year. I think he could have a top 7 season this year. Like I said, he has top 5 upside. He was an MVP talk. I think the only reason he had a statistically worse year last year is because he technically got hurt at the end of the year. He might have been able to have a better year statistically if he didn't get hurt. But I think having Marshawn Lynch there is going to hurt his red zone stats. I think he'll throw less touchdowns. Maybe he'll be a good quarterback for like actual in real life, but fantasy reasons it's going to hurt him. My number 14 quarterback is Cam Newton. Cam Newton was horrendous last year. I personally don't like Cam Newton. I think he's a terrible quarterback, but he runs the ball, which is good for fantasy, as I did with the Marcus Mariota, 50 rushing yards, 150 passing yards. But I don't like him. I think he's a bad quarterback. Just throwing the ball, I don't think he's good. He's being drafted at the 703. I have him at my number 14. My pro tip to you, stay away from Cam Newton. Unless you can get him for pretty much free. Like if the end of the draft comes up and you ended up with, I don't know, someone who I don't have in this top 15. And Cam Newton's sitting there undrafted, pick him up, I guess. But I'm not wasting any draft capital on him. He could have a good year. He could have a terrible year. Like, he's completely unpredictable. He seems to be on a every other year he's good trend. Like, the one year they went to the Super Bowl, he was insane. One of the most efficient years ever. Last year he was bad. So next year, maybe he'll be on the good swing again. But I'm staying away. It's 703 draft price. That's before Kirk Cousins by a round. That's before Russell Wilson even by 5 spots. Who the hell is drafting Cam Newton ahead of Russell Wilson? Like, what idiot? Please put me in a league with that person. That's my thing. Stay away from Cam Newton. Draft him for free. If you can get him undrafted, get him. But don't draft him, please. That's my number 14. Maybe I should move Phillip Rivers up. Phillip Rivers is my number 15. Phillip Rivers is like super underappreciated, mainly because he can't go a whole game without throwing an interception, it seems. But for fantasy purposes, he's pretty fucking damn good. I'm pretty sure he's consistently a top 12 quarterback at least. I have him at 15. You can get him 3 rounds after Cam Newton, which you should. You should take Phillip Rivers 3 rounds after Cam Newton. You should absolutely not draft Cam Newton. I don't know if I was clear about that enough earlier when I said it. Do not draft Cam Newton. Draft Phillip Rivers instead. Although Phillip Rivers is still going 10 spots ahead of Matt Stafford and a round before Andy Dalton. So I take that back too. Don't draft Phillip Rivers either. Take Andy Dalton or Matt Stafford. Phillip Rivers is a good quarterback. They have they added weapons. They lost Danny Woodhead. They added that rookie receiver Mike Williams out of Clemson. I'm really blanking on these rookie names lately, man. They added the rookie wide receiver from Clemson, who's supposed to be the best receiver in the draft. They brought back pretty much their entire receiving core. Keenan Allen is coming back, which is big news because that's Phillip Rivers' favorite target. They lost Danny Woodhead, but Danny Woodhead wasn't there last year, so, that's not a huge thing. You just got to watch his interceptions, man. If Phillip Rivers isn't throwing a ton of interceptions, he's a really, really good quarterback. He definitely could end up in the top 10. 100%. Very possible. I think he's pretty much been there, like I said, most of the last couple years. So, that's my top 15 quarterback rankings. I think the most thing we got out of this is do not draft Cam Newton. I know I have him at 14. I'm officially making the change right now. Cam Newton is 15. Phillip Rivers is 14. Do not draft Cam Newton. Just don't do it. Please, for the love of God, don't draft Cam Newton. I know you're gonna be pissed off when he goes insane and ends up as like the number 2 quarterback, but you'll probably be fine because Stafford will be the number 7 quarterback, and there's not a huge point difference. And instead, you got a really good rest of your team because you didn't spend the 7th round on Cam Newton like a dumbass. Just to read them back, my number 1 quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. My number 2 quarterback is Tom Brady, but he's the real number 1. He's the GOAT. Number 3 quarterback is Andrew Luck. Number 4 is Drew Brees. Number 5 is Russell Wilson. Number 6 is Matt Ryan. Number 7 is Kirk Cousins. Number 8 is Matt Stafford. Number 9 is Andy Dalton. Number 10 is the Dak Attack, Dak Prescott. Number 11 is Marcus Mariota. Number 12 is famous Jameis Winston. Number 13 is the $125 million man, Derek Carr, at the 606. God, that's so ridiculous that he's getting drafted that high. Number 14 is Phillip Rivers. I've amended it. It is no longer Scam Newton because he is 15. I probably could find someone to put in the top 15 over Cam Newton. And if you really, really, really don't want to draft a quarterback, if you want to take the I'm waiting on a quarterback to its most extreme, I actually like Brian Hoyer this year, which is weird to say because no one ever likes Brian Hoyer. But he's got Kyle Shanahan there now. The 49ers team is awful. But Brian Hoyer looked really, really good for the Bears last year. He had 4 straight games of over 300 yards, and he threw for 6 touchdowns and no interceptions in 4 games for the Bears last year. That wasn't with Kyle Shanahan, who seems to be a quarterback whisperer, and the Bears are awful. Just as awful as the 49ers. Well, no, the 49ers are really, really awful, but the Bears are pretty damn awful too, and Brian Hoyer looked great with them, and now he has a quarterback whisperer in Kyle Shanahan. I like Brian Hoyer. Only if you want to wait, like super wait. Like don't draft a quarterback, wait. And you might still be able to find someone better than Brian Hoyer on the waiver wire after that, because I think Brian Hoyer is going undrafted in 100% of leagues. But I'm just saying, I like Brian Hoyer kind of as this sleeper this year. That's it, guys. That's what are we at? 40, almost 50 minutes? Wow, that's a long one. I didn't think it was that long. Time flies when you're having fun. Talking fantasy football. We're hitting deadlines, people. It's Tuesday. I stayed up late on a work night so we could crank out this deadline. I'm not going to edit this. I'm sorry. Now that you've listened to the whole thing, for some shaky oohs and uhs and ums, while I try and think of shit to say, any long pause breaks or clickings of the pen or dropping the pen, kind of shit I usually edit out of this thing. But it's late and I want to hit my deadline because we're all about hitting deadlines here at the B.S. Nerds. So that's Joe's Fantasy Field Goal Ep.3. Next week, I don't know if I'm going to, or not next week, but next episode, I don't know if I'm going to do tight end rankings. Maybe we'll do sleepers. Maybe we'll do top value guys. I don't know yet, but we've got good content coming on the Fantasy Field Goal. We got good content coming on the BS Nerd Show. We'll be recording that on Thursday. Some Celtics drama going on. Alright guys, well, have a nice night, and I'll see you next time.